At the end of the last lesson, we talked about the philosophy of coaching being based in people reaching their potential and a learning and development frame. And this lesson is all about that. It's all about coaching as a reflective learning activity. And this is because coaching is very much influenced or based in humanistic psychology. And humanistic psychology was based in some values or assumptions about people that are sometimes described as person-centered. They are a belief that people are driven to grow and develop rather than stagnate, that it is our natural human desire to reach our potential and be at our best, and that the challenge of development and growth is very much part of the enjoyment of life. That a person is a whole person, not just the part that is doing the job. So if you were, for example, to look at coaching in the workplace, you wouldn't necessarily shut down all discussion about things that are going on outside of work with your client, because you understand that that very much influences how they are in their work. The assumption that goodwill is how most people operate, an optimistic belief that people are doing their best and are, for the most part, trustworthy. And that people are abundant in their resources rather than in deficit. So quite a shift from the focus of people having problems or being in need of healing or woundedness. The assumption of humanistic psychology was that we have many resources and we're actually very intelligent and empowered naturally. Carl Rogers was the founder of humanistic psychology and developed practices for therapists to use it, and he called these practices person-centered conditions. And these were that the therapist needed to have congruence, meaning genuineness, able to be real, share their feelings and attitudes, and not just opinions and judgments with their client. That they had to demonstrate unconditional positive regard for their clients, accepting and prizing the other person without that person having to first prove or demonstrate anything. So it was a kind of assumption of the goodness of your client. And that they could experience empathy, they could put themselves in the shoes of their client, understanding another person's feelings and experience, as well as being able to communicate that understanding. And all of these things are very core and have been integrated into coaching. So it's worth reflecting, how do these values sit with you? How do these conditions sit with how you relate to the people that you will be coaching or that you want to coach? Are you able to be real with them? Are you able to have unconditional positive regard and empathy? Do you assume that they're already really good? Another really big learning and development frame that influences coaching is the understanding of adult learning, which was developed largely by David Kolb. So one of the big theories of adult learning is Kolb's theory of experiential learning, which is best known from this diagram of how we learn from an experience. So Kolb said that we learn best from our own personal experiences, and we learn from those experiences if we take time to reflect on them. So if we get a chance to ask ourselves, what just happened there, and think about it. This allows us to come to our own conclusions or theories and to integrate new thinking or understanding in with our existing theories. And last of all, this allows us to plan or experiment what to do differently or how to be in similar experiences. So this cycle is the complete learning cycle. Having an actual experience, having an opportunity to reflect on that experience, therefore coming up with our own conclusion, and then deciding or planning on how to be in experiences like that in the future. It's really important to notice that Kolb suggested that learning from trial and error from our own direct experience was the most powerful mechanism for learning as an adult. And that experience alone wasn't enough. The value came from reflecting on the action. So the 2, 3 and 4 in this cycle can happen quite rapidly. It doesn't have to take as long as an experience. It can take different levels of time. But the core questions to ask would be, what just happened in that experience? What worked? What didn't work? And what would you do differently next time? And these questions integrate a process of reflection into an experience. So if you take time at the end of something to ask yourself these things, do not underestimate the difference it could make to actually getting learning from the experience. Other words for reflective practice, which as a word is quite academic, might be personal reflection, self-review, self-awareness, self-critique, self-appraisal, or self-assessment. We might talk about it as intrapersonal awareness, being aware of ourselves, or reflective dialogue, having a conversation that is reflective in its nature. Doing critical evaluation, meaning standing outside of the situation and really thinking about it critically, objectively. Self-analysis of things like thoughts, feelings, actions and performance would all be considered reflective practice. So you can see that coaching is fundamentally a reflective practice. It is a reflective dialogue in which the coach is facilitating their client to do reflection. One last model that I find quite useful for thinking about learning in coaching is a levels of learning model from Robert Hargrove, the author of Masterful Coaching. Hargrove spoke about 3 levels: single loop learning, meaning action to change behaviours, which he saw as fundamental level. Double loop learning, working with your client to reframe, to change their thinking. And triple loop learning, working with your client to create shifts that change perceptions of self or the world in ways that are empowering for them. So his approach differentiated between helping people perform better, single loop learning, getting to the source of people's behaviours and altering their frames of reference, double loop learning, and working with ways of being or empowering people to create a shift in their point of view about themselves with the intent to learn, grow and produce the results that they desire, triple loop learning. And that is the end of the discussion on coaching as a reflective learning activity. The next lesson talks about the fundamental principle of accountability in coaching. I hope to see you there.